Hi there. Welcome to this, the latest of a series of online video lessons intended to provide you important principles and helpful tips to guide your understanding and practice of public speaking. In this first of a two-part series, we're going to look at one of the most important reasons why folks engage in public speaking, and that's speaking to inform. Not only during your time in higher education, but in virtually any professional career, there will be any number of times where you're going to need to teach an audience, or train a group of people, or brief folks that you're working with, or engage in consultation or invited lectures for public organizations, where you're going to need to inform them of something that they might not know too much about. So, an understanding how to inform an audience is a crucial development in your public speaking repertoire. So, in this lesson, we're going to talk about what informative speaking actually is, address briefly the different types of informative speeches you might deliver, or more accurately, what sorts of things you might need to inform folks about. And in particular, we're going to emphasize techniques for informing your audience. So, let's get started. According to Fraley and Tuman, speaking to inform involves teaching the audience something and increasing listeners' understanding, awareness, or sensitivity to your topic. Now, this may seem like a pretty straightforward, uninteresting definition, but part of this is absolutely crucial to understand when you think about the context of informative speaking. Teaching the audience something involves a really important reality. If the audience doesn't come away from your speech not just appreciating what you said, but actually remembering the things that you talked about after the speech is over, then you really haven't done your job. Because after all, to teach somebody is to give them information or an understanding of an idea that they're going to be able to bring into play and apply at some other point in their life. So this is a key thing that's going to drive your design and your presentation of informative speaking. At this moment, you are a teacher, and you need to make sure that your audience understands what you're talking about, not just while the speech is going on, but at some point after the speech is over. Because otherwise, what's the point of informing them? So given that, what kinds of things might you potentially inform the audience about? Well, you can certainly inform audiences about objects, things that they might need to understand, whether it be a type of food or a new form of technology. Individuals or groups, maybe somebody new is entering your organization and you want to let your colleagues know who this person is. Maybe you're delivering a report on an important public figure. Events, of course, are really important. Things that happen, be they historical events or contemporary events, where the emphasis in the teaching is on what happened, how did it happen, and why did it happen that way. We often inform audiences about processes where we're dealing with complex phenomena that involve multiple variables or moving parts, and we need to help our audience understand how do we get from point A to point Z? What are the cause and effect relationships between one step, another step, and a final step in a process? And finally, we can inform our audience about ideas, important concepts, key abstractions that your audience is going to need to understand, either in an academic or in a professional sense. So rather than go at each of these types of informative speeches in turn, what we can do is look at the different ways in which we can inform audiences, and throughout that process, look at some examples of speeches that you might deliver that could fall under several of these categories. So how do we inform our audiences? Fraley and Tuman talk about some significant techniques that aren't just intended to be used singly in one particular speech, but could be used in combination in any number of speeches. We inform by providing definitions, by explaining things, by describing phenomena, by engaging in demonstration, and by sharing a narrative. What do these techniques involve? When we're engaging in definition, according to Fraley and Tuman, we're breaking something down by its parts and explaining how they add up, explaining the essence, meaning, purpose, or identity of something. If you think about it in terms of a dictionary, if you want to know what a word means, a definition provides you what that word actually means. But sometimes when we're talking about a complex phenomena, we need to define it in more substantive and complicated ways. So the definition isn't just going to be a one sentence, here's what this word means, but it might be an entire speech that establishes this is what this object or this event or this phenomenon is about. So You might think about definitions such as what is a craft beer? What constitutes that kind of beer from other kinds of beers? What does it mean to be a mentor? Who are mentors? What do they do? And what separates mentors from other kinds of advisors? What was the Birmingham Children's Crusade? In this important event in the civil rights movement, who was involved? When did it happen? And why did it happen? And what were the outcomes? What is genetic testing? Describing this particular process and talking about what it is and why it's done and what the consequences might be. What is net neutrality? An idea that's centrally important in discussing public policy regarding access to the internet. A lot of folks are impacted by this concept, but don't really know what it means. So in each of these instances, be it an object, a type of person, an event, a process, or an idea, definition would help us understand the central question, what is this thing? Okay, that's definition. The second primary technique for informing is explanation. Analysis of something for purposes of clarity and specificity by tracing a line of reasoning or a series of causal connections between events. So when we're explaining, essentially we're answering the central questions, how does something happen, or why does something happen? Of course, some combination of the two. For instance, wind turbine energy. What is it that these windmills out in the middle of nowhere actually do that generates the power that can make our homes and our businesses flourish? The Black Lives Matter movement, not just where it came from, but what it's about and what the movement actually does in order to accomplish its social and political purposes. The spread of viral diseases, something that's really important to all of us. How does a virus actually work to make you sick? And how does a virus get from one host to another host? How Oreos are made. We scarf these things down all the time. It could be fascinating to find out how you get from raw materials to those nummylicious cookies. The physiology of speech anxiety. If you're nervous giving a public speech, how does that actually work? Why do you have the kinds of feelings that you have in your stomach and in your hands and feet and in your lungs and heart? All of these involve a process of explanation, where we try to explain how something happens or why something happens, usually in a series of steps and cause to effect relationships. So that's explanation. The third technique for informing audiences is description. According to Frawley and Tuman, description involves using words to paint a mental picture for your listeners so that they can close their eyes and imagine what you're saying. Now, it's not necessarily going to be the case that an informative speech will be executed entirely through description and no other techniques for informing, but at specific points in any kind of informative speech, using concrete detail, especially detail that is vivid, detail that helps your audience vicariously see something or hear something or feel something, is going to give them a much more effective sense of what it is that you're talking about. So, for instance, think about a speech in which you're talking about extreme sleep deprivation. You can talk about the technical physiological processes, but you could also engage in vivid description of what extreme sleep deprivation feels like. You could talk about the science of fall foliage and why it is that leaves turn color, but when you're talking about different fall foliage patterns that come from different trees and or in different regions of the United States, vivid description of the different kinds of colors and how they combine could really be helpful. Attending the True False Film Festival in Columbia, Missouri might be an experience that you want your audience to understand and maybe participate in. So describing what it is to be an attendee of the festival, what kinds of things you experience, the kinds of people that are there, the kinds of movies that you'll see, and just what it feels like to be in the crowd. It may be difficult to help people understand how it is that you distinguish between Pinot Noir and a Cabernet, for instance. But if you're able to engage in concrete description about the different kind of taste sensations and smells that distinguish one wine for another, it can really be interesting and helpful for your audience. Finally, family life on a farm. If your audience has never lived on a farm, this is not something they'll really be able to identify with. So using vivid description about what it's like in the day-to-day experience, what kinds of things that farm families do, what it's like to live on a farm with the sights and sounds and smells, all of that can make this a really vibrant thing that the audience can then imagine themselves in. So you can see why description as an informative technique is going to be really important. The fourth technique for informing is demonstration. Now, sometimes when you want to teach your audience how a process or a set of guidelines works, you're not just going to want to use explanation, because sometimes if it's especially a tactile process, something where you want your audience to be able to do something, the demonstrations often call for both physical modeling and verbal elements as you lead the audience through the parts or steps. So think about some of the kinds of topics you might want to inform your audience about, because this is something you might want the audience to actually turn around and do later on. For instance, making sushi. Lots of people love sushi, and lots of people are a little standoffish about making it themselves because it seems so complicated. A demonstration could really simplify it. Learning basic guitar. Someone might want to play the guitar, but it seems like it's something that's beyond them. So providing a demonstration in which you show them, standing up in front of the room with a guitar, how it is that you can play a basic chord might really help them feel like this is something they can do. Getting started with yoga. What are some basic poses that can help an audience understand and get started in this really great fitness opportunity? Job interview body language. Being able to demonstrate with your own body language and then combined with an explanation of why this body language is helpful is something that your audience will not only be able to benefit from in the hearing, but also in the doing. Playing Magic the Gathering. This or any number of kinds of games or leisure activities might involve helping audiences understand how it's done so they can see the process in a step-by-step in person, might make it a little bit easier for audiences to pursue afterwards. So in these kinds of speeches, which can be really important, sometimes audiences need a vicarious hands-on experience, and the demonstration can be really helpful. Finally, narrative. Frawley and Tuman talk about narrative as a story, and the story can be used to both share information and capture the audience's attention. Think about the kinds of things that you do in your own conversations when you get together with friends or family that you haven't seen for a while. When you answer the question, "Hey, what's been going on?" we immediately kick into storytelling. It is a very primal way in which we inform our audiences. And so stories can really be used well to help an audience get in touch with the thing you want to inform them about. Narratives can also be used to humanize a speaker for listeners. If you are taking the role of a storyteller, it doesn't just give vivid description of a particular event or process or whatever it is you're telling a story about. It also depicts you as somebody that has first-hand eyewitness experience and or a particular expertise that enables you to share this in such a vivid and evocative way. So it can boost your credibility or ethos as a speaker. So for instance, if I want to talk about the importance of engaging in outdoor activity, getting in touch with nature, I might tell a story about my first Boy Scout camp out in which I can provide some of the vivid details about what it was like to do that nature hike through the woods or to fall asleep at night to the sounds of crickets. If I want to give a speech about the Declaration of Independence and how it came to be, I could tell some historical facts, but if I also engaged in some narrative anecdotes regarding the Second Continental Congress and what it was like during that really hot June and July in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when they had to suss out how they were actually going to construct this document, it could really add a vivid dramatic layer to your information. Experiencing Greek rush. You might provide things such as the benefits of joining a fraternity or sorority and providing an explanation of the different steps or events, but telling a story about an informal rush party, for instance, might give your listeners an opportunity to get a vivid, vicarious experience for what this is like. Surviving Hurricane Katrina. Beyond the facts and figures of the devastation of that hurricane, you could tell the story of one particular family in a New Orleans parish that lost everything and describing what they needed to do in order to pick up the pieces and move on with their lives. And of course, if you want to get folks to have a vivid understanding of the University of Missouri sports culture, you could tell the infamous story of the fifth down game, where the Mizzou Tigers lost a heartbreaker because of a really stupid ref's call. Now, in each of these and a whole host of other circumstances, telling a story can provide the vivid, concrete details, a layer of drama and interest, and also depict you as a storyteller that can really provide a rich vibrance to what might otherwise be a dry explanation of facts. Okay, so in this first video on informative speaking, the most important ideas you want to think about are the nature of what informative speaking is, remembering first and foremost that you are teaching an audience, and teaching an audience involves the important reality that if they don't remember what you talked about and understand it clearly enough to be able to apply that information in their own lives after the speech is over, then your speech wasn't really that effective. We talked about techniques for informing your audience, the important applications of definition, explanation, description, demonstration, and narrative, different ways that you can combine these in order to provide effective information for your audiences. And as we were doing that, we also illustrated some of the important types of informative speeches that you'll probably get involved with. Being able to speak about objects, persons or groups, events, processes, or bigger ideas. So, if you have any questions or concerns about any of these ideas, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.